What's up guys, it's Will back again, and today's review is Would You Rather. This film was first requested to me by Pedestrian Predictor on my It Follows review that I released back on the 4th of July. Not surprising that I got another horror movie request from you horror movie junkies out there. You guys love some horror and you're expanding my horizons, I gotta say. But anyway, let's get into my review of Would You Rather. Okay, so Would You Rather is a 2012 psychological horror thriller film that was directed by David Guy Levy and mostly follows main protagonist Iris, played by Brittany Snow. The movie kicks off when Iris accepts an invitation to her dinner party competition where she's told that if she wins, her brother's leukemia treatment and bone marrow transplant that Iris cannot afford herself will be paid for in full by the philanthropist Shepard Lambrick. Well, eventually Iris accepts the invitation and arrives at Shepard Lambrick's mansion later that night, where she meets the other 7 contestants in this weird competition that gets very crazy very quickly. All 8 of the contestants quickly realize they are playing a very violent and crazy version of the game Would You Rather against their will, hence making them prisoners of the game and host Shepard Lambrick. The game's timed options get increasingly more dangerous and violent, thus making the choices harder and more tension-filled, and the rest of the movie is spent watching our 8 contestants make these tough choices to the entertainment of the hosts. Okay, so I gotta tell you guys, this movie is absolutely ridiculous. It almost seems like the filmmakers were unknowingly going for a so bad it's good approach, because this movie is laughably bad in a lot of cases. I mean, it does have a few gruesome and horrifying moments that fulfill their design purpose to frighten you and make you feel uneasy, but most of the time I found myself laughing at how bad and predictable this movie was. The movie tries to make you care about the characters because they all have an unfortunate reason for agreeing to compete in this game, like helping out a loved one in some way, shape, or form, and so on. The problem is that these backstories are rarely ever explored in any real significant way, and eventually the contestants start dropping like flies in very ridiculous and anticlimactic ways. It felt like there was no weight to any of the contestants falling out of the competition or even completing their turn, because besides Iris, you know like one little detail about each one of them, and that's it. No less, no more. Iris is, for all intents and purposes, this story's main protagonist, and she's the only character in this movie that we know anything about at all, and even then it's like 2 small things. I guess this movie is trying to go for a less is more approach, and they're more worried about the choices the characters have to make and the consequences of those choices rather than the characters themselves. But the problem is that when these characters make tough choices and you have to watch them undergo some physical or psychological trauma, it amounts to nothing more than shock value. There's also moments where the film attempts to transition to different levels of the game, and the way in which it does this just feels incredibly flimsy and just silly. There are some really awesome actors in this movie that play characters that feel absolutely pointless. 3 I can name off the top of my head are June Squibb, who was nominated for an Oscar back in 2014 for her work in Nebraska, which is after this movie came out, I get that, but still. Lawerence Gilliard Jr., who played D'Angelo in The Wire, and Robin Lord Taylor, who played Oswald Cobblepot in the Gotham TV show, also after 2012, but still. All 3 of these actors play roles that feel like they absolutely served no purpose whatsoever, and I guess they were all just looking for work, because in 2 of their cases it's before they got cast in big roles. But just a heads up, if you did some research and saw these actors' names on the cast list, don't expect lengthy and great performances out of them in this movie. Besides Brittany Snow and June Squibb, I didn't like the acting of any single character in this movie. Jeffrey Combs plays the main antagonist Shepard Lambrick, and I felt he was extremely underwhelming. He felt over the top and pretty ridiculous, and I never felt like his character was believable in any way, shape, or form. He's acted and written in a way that's just very bland and one-dimensional, and I doubt that you'd even remember his name after you watch this movie, or any of the characters' names really, besides Iris. But yeah, Brittany Snow as Iris, I for the most part enjoyed in this movie because she relayed that feeling of fear and helplessness pretty well, and June Squibb pretty much did the same with her screen time too. I also felt like the dialogue was really stiff and weak overall. This is mostly the case with Shepard Lambrick's character, who goes on these long speeches about following the rules of the game down to a T, and it's just tiresome after a while. The characters try to communicate with each other and help each other out after a while, but the dialogue feels mostly stiff and very unrealistic. The characters' interactions with one another felt like they were almost robotic in some cases, I'd say. Okay, so as for the horror in this film, it's mostly shock value horror, as I said, said, there wasn't very much thriller or suspenseful aspects in this movie, but there are some. There were some scenes that had me a little uneasy as to what was about to happen, but there were a lot of other scenes that felt really rushed or anticlimactic. Usually they'll build up something for a couple minutes, then when it actually happens, you're just like, that was kinda not as scary as I thought it would be. What this movie is to me is a far less scary and far less inventive Saw. It's sort of like a cheesy, less exciting dinner party version of Saw. While Saw films aren't always great either, they're much scarier with their shock value than this movie is. There's also a really odd ending to this film that I personally hated. Some will like it because it's pretty dark and unique, but I thought it was just out of place and a little weird. Okay, so I gotta say, I was extremely disappointed with this film. I thought it had some suspenseful and scary scenes that had me on the edge of my seat, and some decent acting from a few characters. But I also thought the characters as a whole were extremely boring and underdeveloped. The main antagonist was over the top and silly, the shock value horror was relatively boring and the story's ending was terrible, and the dialogue felt very stiff. I'm gonna give this movie a 3.5 out of 10 and definitely recommend you pass on this one. It is on Netflix though if you decide you want to take the chance on it, but Netflix has a ton of other great content, so I'm not sure why anyone would rather watch this over Netflix's original content. So did you guys see Would You Rather yet? What did you think of it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if not, let me know whether this is your kind of movie or not. And as always, if you like this video, click that like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for much more content like this. Thanks again to Pedestrian Predictor for the request, whose channel link you can find in the description below. Keep the requests coming, guys. This is a very fun experience for me getting to watch some movies I never would have if not for your requests, so I want to thank you for that. That's all for now though. This is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next review.